What's the difference between markup and margin? Well, if you're not sure, it's probably costing you a lot of money. That will be the topic of this week's Planning for Profit Minute. Now, as we look at markup and margin, these two items, quite frankly, are some of the most misunderstood terms in the trades industry today and have always been. In a simple nutshell, markup is expressed as a percentage of cost, whereas margin is expressed as a percentage of the total sell price. Now, let's dig into this a little bit deeper. Again, markup is shown as a percentage of cost, whereas margin is a percentage of the sell. Again, keep in mind the sell price is a lot higher, so that percentage of cost is a much smaller percentage of that, if you will. Right? And again, why does it really matter? Well, it's critically important because, again, if you're missing it up, you're not sure of the difference, then odds are you're using a markup and you're leaving a lot of money on the table. Right? Now, this is important because your profit and loss statement shows gross profit for your company. The dollar amount is already there, right? You've got the total revenues, then you have cost of sales, right, or cost of goods sold, and right underneath that is your gross profit dollar. And it's gross profit or gross margin that you pay all your company's overhead expenses with. Now, both methods, markup and margin, will give you a gross profit. The question is it enough for you to pay your bills? Again, I hear all the time, well, my gross profit's pretty good. We're right at the national average. I really don't care how you compare to the national average. And the reason for that is because your overhead is different than every other company's out there. How you set up your chart of accounts, your profit and loss statement is different than every other company out there. And so you can't compare yourself to the other contractors. The question is, again, is it enough for you to cover your cost of operation and still generate the profit that you're looking for? Now, if we look at a very simple profit and loss statement, and I'm kind of going to work my numbers backwards here a little bit. Let's say you had a total cost of goods sold. Your total materials were $300,000, and you're using a 40% gross margin or profit target. The way that you're going to calculate that is you're going to divide by 0.6. We'll talk about that more in here in just a moment. Right, so $300,000 divided by 0.6, you're going to sell all that material for $500,000. Right, so if your sales are $500,000, your cost of goods sold are $300,000, you subtract that out, and your gross profit at that point is $200,000 or 40% of your total sales. Well, now from that, you've got all of your overhead expenses. So I've got rent and I've got insurance and I've got everything else all combined in here in overhead expenses. That tallies up $180,000. So I subtract that from my gross profit, leaving me a net profit of $20,000. That's what's left over after all the bills are paid, right? That's a gross margin example, right? And your P&L uses gross margin. What if it was gross profit? Well, your cost of goods sold doesn't change at all, right? So let's say instead of using margin, we're going to use markup, right? So our materials were $300,000, the same as we had before. We were shooting for a 40% markup, and we use a 1.4 multiplier. Well, okay, $300,000 times 1.4, you're going to sell that $300,000 worth of stuff for $420,000, not the $500 we did in the other example. So now when I subtract my cost of goods sold from the sales, we've got a total gross profit of $120,000. That's only 28.5% of the total, not 40%. Now, your costs of operation don't change any. Your overhead is still all the same. So you tally that up, that's still $180,000. When I subtract the $180,000 from that $120,000 gross profit, we can see very clearly now, we didn't make $20,000, we lost $60,000. And that's the difference between markup and margin. So again, let's go a little bit deeper in there. Markup, we said, is shown as a percentage of the material cost. And it uses a multiplier. So let's say we've got somebody who came to us and we told them we were going to do a job for 10% over cost. Well, okay, using markup, 10% of let's say my job costs are $1,000. 10% of that is going to be $100, right? So $1,000 times 1.1 is I'm going to sell that then for $1,100. Now, here's the kicker. To determine your actual profit on the job, you simply take the profit for the job divided by the job sell price. So in this example, right, we had a profit of $100, the $1,100 sell minus my $1,000 cost, right? Divided by my sell price of $1,100, we can see at that point we had a gross profit of 9.09%, not the 10% that we thought we did. Now you can say, well, come on, Bill, that's less than 1%. What's the big deal? Spread that over $1 million, it starts to add up pretty quickly. Right? Now, let's take this a step farther. Okay, what is the right way to do it? Well, the right way is using margin. Margin, again, is expressed as a percentage of the sell price, and it's calculated using a divisor, not a multiplier. So what we're going to do at this point is to figure out our divisor is we simply take 1 minus our desired net profit percentage. Right, so if our desired net profit is 10%, we're going to take 1 minus that 10%, or 0.1 in a decimal form. My divisor will then be 0.9. If I'm looking for a 20% net profit, 1 divided by 0.2 or minus 0.2 gives me a divisor of 0.8. 30%, 0.7. 40%, 0.6. So on down the line. If I'm looking for 25%, 0.75 is my divisor. Right? You simply take 1 minus your target net profit, it'll give you your divisor. Once you have that divisor, now you can do the math. So if my job costs are $1,000, divide that by 0.9 because I'm shooting for a 10% net profit. I'm going to sell that job for $1,111, not $1,100. Right? And again, we can verify the profit on this simply by taking, again, the profit divided by our sell. So in this case, $111, the $1,111 sell price minus $1,000 cost. So $111 profit divided by $1,111 sell price. That is a true 10% gross profit. Now, again, you can still be saying, but Bill, that's less than 1%. Is it really that big of a deal? Well, that's at 1% or a 10% profit. The higher the target gross margin you're looking for, the greater the impact on your overall profitability, right? With that 10% markup is only a 9.09% gross profit. That was your less than 1%. But if we're at 20%, a 20% markup is only a 17% gross profit. Now our discrepancy is 3%. Spread that over $1 million or more. 30%. Markup is only a 23% gross profit. That's a 7% discrepancy. The example we had in our sample profit loss statement I showed you a minute ago, we were shooting for a 40%. Well, 40% markup is only at 29% profit, technically 28.75, right? You're now at 11% discrepancy, and at 50%, you're at a 16.7% discrepancy, where you're literally leaving 16.7% on the table. We're underbilling our customers by that much money. And again, remember, this is the money that will cover your cost of operation, which needs to happen before you actually generate a net profit. I really don't care what the gross profit is. I just want to make sure that I'm calculating it properly so we're getting every dollar that we expect to be getting. We hope you found this helpful. If you have questions, reach out and talk to us. And that is this week's Planning for Profit Minute.